Good evening and welcome to Stratford-on-Avon District Council Planning Committee. My name is Councillor Lewis Adam. I'm your chairman for this evening. I'll start with some housekeeping just to run through. There is no fire drill plan, so if it does go off, please make sure to make an orderly exit, and the muster point is the car park by the pub across the road. Please make sure your phones are either off or on silent mode so as not to disturb the flow of the meeting. This is a meeting in public, not a public meeting, and so only those registered to speak are permitted to do so. I'll call you forward at the appropriate time and give you further instructions at that point. And you should be aware that the meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the website. Okay, I'll introduce our top table. From Democratic Services, we've got Kira Keller. Our solicitor this evening is Sue Mullins. Our planning manager is Alice Cosnett, and our planning officers are Sarah Leach and Malvina Itzik. Alice, I believe you've got a statement prepared.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My role is to provide impartial advice and to assist members in their decision taking.
Thank you very much. Okay, we can now move on to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence.
We've apologies for Councillor Passingham.
Thank you very much. Noted. Item 2, disclosures of interest. I'll start and just say I was contacted by one of the speakers for the second item today. I believe all the rest of the members of the committee were, so just to make that known. I also carried out an informal site visit to the site for item 5. I didn't see or speak to anyone, but I just went to visit. Any other disclosures of interest? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chairman. I also paid an unannounced site visit to both sites. I didn't see you, I didn't see anybody else, and I didn't speak to anybody else.
Thank you very much. Councillor Parry.
Thank you and good evening, Chair. I am the ward member for the first application and have registered to speak. And with regard to the second application, when the planning application prior to this one came forward, I was working at the estate agent that was involved in selling the site. However, with regard to this application, I've had absolutely no involvement with it, and therefore I've come to the meeting with an open mind.
Thank you very much. Councillor Scorer.
Thank you, Chairman. For the second application, I'm the ward member for Kyneton. Also, I'm a parish councillor at Kyneton, and when it was discussed at parish, I withdrew myself from the committee, and I come to the meeting with an open mind, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further disclosures? No, in which case we can move on to item 3, minutes. So we have to just confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of May 2024. We all agreed those are accurate representation? Very good, thank you very much. In which case we can move on to item 4, our first application for this evening, which is application 24/00582/FUL 1 Warwick Road, Wellesbourne. Sarah Leach is our presenting officer. When you're ready, take it away.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. This proposal is seeking planning permission for the erection of one dwelling house and alterations to the existing access of 1 Warwick Road. The application site is located within Wellesbourne and can be identified by the black dot. The application site is outlined red, which is located north of Wellesbourne Conservation Area, which directly borders the site. The conservation area boundary is outlined purple. The pink dashed line represents the ward boundary. The red indicates the closest listed building to the application site. The application site is also located in the built-up area boundary of Wellesbourne. This aerial photo shows the application site and its surroundings. This photo was taken in 2021. The application site is a corner plot with Warwick Road to the south and Newbold Road to the east of the application site. This site plan shows the existing dwelling, number 1, and the proposed new dwelling, access and parking arrangements. The plan also shows the residential curtilage of each property. Here are the proposed elevations for the new dwelling. Here we have, here are some site photographs and the surroundings. This one's looking towards the conservation area. The officer recommendation is to grant this application subject to the conditions and notes set out in the report and the updates on the update sheet.
Thank you very much. Okay, we can move on to our first speaker, who's Councillor Anne Pryor from Wellesbourne Parish Council. Good evening. So you've got 3 minutes. Happy to give you a 30-second warning before your time expires. Other time is the button on the right-hand side just to turn on the microphone. Otherwise, when you're happy, take it away.
We were a little late lodging any comments because we didn't get some correct information, but that's by the by. Parish Council objects to this planning application. The positioning of this development is out of character with the neighbouring properties. This is a detached house in a corner position and does not mirror any other properties in the area. The houses adjacent to this proposed development are terraces or semi-detached. Opposite on Newbold Road is a development of retail outlets with flats above, and whilst they too are at an angle, they're not in front of the build line leading into Newbold Road, nor the build line leading into Kyneton Road. The Parish Council is very concerned about this proposed development that's in front of the build line of both Newbold Road and Warwick Road. And since planning has refused developments in front of the build line in neighbouring properties, it seems counterintuitive that they're prepared to accept this development. Of course, without coming in front of the build line, it couldn't happen. However, that's not a reason for accepting it. It merely demonstrates further that this is an unsuitable development in this place. We believe it's an overdevelopment of a limited site, offering little really usable amenity space, despite the officer's statement. It also offers very little space for the movement of 4 vehicles in a restricted parking space, being dependent on those vehicles being parked tightly to facilitate turning circles, to exit the parking in a forward direction, as reverse exiting would be dangerous for everyone, including the high number of pedestrians who cross this area every day, including young children going to school. The vehicular access, we think, is inadequate and wrong. Access and egress diagrams show access from the Warwick Road from the direction of the A429, yet egress is demonstrated going left out of the plot to the Kyneton Road or the Newbold Road. It is more likely that egress will be directly across the road, a busy route at all times of day, to access the gyratory system of Church Street in Wellesbourne leading to the A429. The junction at this site has 4 roads converging, with the Warwick Road dividing into 2, one part continuing and becoming the Kyneton Road, and the other part leading into the village onto the gyratory system. This is one of the pinch points in the village, with cars backing up on the Newbold Road, with parking on both sides, delivery lorries to the convenience store and school traffic. It is the focus of speeding in the village. We've recently done a survey of the speeding and the number of cars in the village, and the speeding in this area is in excess of 30 miles an hour, with recorded speed coming round the gyratory of a frightening amount. To add a 3-bedroomed house with attached vehicles to this mix creates real problems, we feel. Whilst the neighbourhood plan allows for infill housing in the parish, this should be done in line with all other aspects of the neighbourhood plan, being sympathetic to the street scene, creating a development that does not cause potential harm to residents of the parish.
Ask you to wrap it up as quickly as possible.
At my last few words, and does not worsen an already problematic junction for traffic. So we wish to object.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions for our parish council representative? Nothing forthcoming? In which case, thank you very much for your contribution. Okay, we'll move on then to our next and final speaker, Councillor Parry. Good evening, Councillor. You have 5 minutes. Happy to give you a 30-second warning. Otherwise, when you're ready, take it away.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, councillors. I don't think I need 5 minutes. You will have seen in the report that I originally put forward a consultee's response of objection, and I can understand the parish council's concerns regarding the design and the impact on the character of the area. However, I did decide to withdraw my objection, having read the very comprehensive planning committee report, as I felt that there wasn't a strong enough material planning reason that came forward. So I felt I would leave it up to the committee to review and consider the application themselves. I have no further comment to make, Chair.
Thank you.
I will just add that, sorry, if I may just add, I don't like it, and I think it compromises the corner, but that, sadly, is not a material planning reason.
Additional comments noted. Thank you very much, Councillor. Members, do we have any questions for our ward member? Again, nothing forthcoming. Thank you very much. Okay, we now move on then to points of clarification from our officers. Councillor Holmes first.
Thank you, Chair. So, after hearing some of the comments so far, the officers in the report said that there's an acceptable level of amenity space. Is that still the case after hearing what you've heard so far? Thank you.
Yeah, there's an acceptable level of amenity space. Sorry if I just find the right section in the report. So on page 8, second paragraph from the bottom, the report says the proposed dwelling is a 3-bedroom and requires 50 square metres, and the new dwelling's amenity space would be 66 square metres. Number 1 Warwick Road would retain approximately 50.1 square metres, and that's also a 3-bed, so it's in line with the SPD.
Thank you. Councillor Keithley next.
Thank you, Chair. I just heard from the Parish Council objecting to the entrance and access and egress from the site. I wonder if we could see something in detail on our plan so that we can satisfy ourselves with those arrangements. I haven't been to site, but I do drive that road, and it's on a corner. I'm not going to say any more, but I would like to see the detail if you could put it up for us and just talk us through what's proposed.
Yeah, I can just get those plans up. So this is the site plan, which shows the visibility displays and the additional parking and the turning area.
Parish Council has suggested there were schematics showing in and out and not across, but there's nothing on there showing the direction of movement, so it's just an ordinary entrance onto Warwick Road. Is it just in front of that junction? Simple as that?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Councillor Harvey.
A number of questions. Just on that, am I right in thinking, having visited, that there is an existing dropped curb and there is an existing entrance way for a car into the neighbouring property? Existing, so that am I right in thinking that what's being proposed is not different in principle to what's already there? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So there's an existing access that serves number 1. This scheme would see the parking here instead of the existing driveway, and it would see parking obviously here for the new dwelling and the turning area.
And the drop curb that is used in that diagram is the same. Is it the same one that's already there on the ground?
Yeah.
Fine, thank you. That was one question. Question about building lines. And the parish council's got a concern about that. I note that just in the top left-hand corner is the corner of the next terrace. And it is possible to argue, depending which way, whether your glass is half full or half empty, that numbers 1, 2, or 1, 3, 5 and 7 are the exception, that they don't follow the existing building line because they're set too far back, whereas the proposed house, as I see it, aligns more or less with the building line further down Warwick Road. And it does seem to me on that diagram that as far as Newbold Road is concerned...
Councillor Harvey, can you just round off to a question?
The question is, how important is the question of the building line in these circumstances? There was reference by the parish council to an existing decision having been taken which went the other way, so to speak. So I wonder, where is the degree of consistency? How important is the building line in this particular case?
I believe the application that the parish council were referring to was for number 1 Newbold Road. That was for I think it was a garage or an outbuilding, and that was going to be forward of the principal elevation of the property, and therefore would not have been considered subservient. I have got a plan of the building lines drawn on, if that's useful, which... Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. So this slide shows the building lines. So this is the neighbouring terrace building line here, the Warwick Road building line across here, which the new dwelling is set back from, and the Newbold Road building line is this one here.
Would it be accurate to describe that as a marginal miscreant corner there on that building?
In my view, I would say it was marginal. I think what I was just going to add to Sarah's comments was that it is a judgment. You obviously mentioned about the consistency point. It's for officers and for you as members to look at what's proposed and consider whether you think the scheme will be unacceptable as a result of that impact on the building line. Like you say, if you look at the terrace, it is marginally in front, but if you look at the street as a whole, it isn't. And our view as officers is that we're looking at the context of the site, i.e. the street scene, and it doesn't just relate to the immediate context. But again, that's for members to judge and assess.
Councillor Harding.
Thank you, Chair. The red boundary line seems a little baffling to me. Have you checked with County Highways the extent of the highway at this point? Because it looks to me as if they're claiming some of the highway verge as part of the site, in which case we could end up with parking right next to the road and stacking. And secondly, can we guarantee there is always going to be space for those cars to back up and turn around so they always go into the site forwards and out of the site backwards?
So this was actually a point which was picked up by the parish council in terms of the quite unusual red line, which I think Sarah's going to share. Now, the reason for that is our local list requires the red line includes any land required for the development to take place, and that includes access and, importantly, visibility displays. So that's why you tend to get quite unusual red lines. In this case, it goes right out to the junction because that's where cars are going to be entering Warwick Road and including the visibility displays on both sides. Now, in terms of parking on the highway, what I would say is that the site plan shows that there's sufficient parking within the site to meet the SPD standards. So as far as officers are concerned, that's as much as we feel we can control. To go beyond that and kind of condition no on-street parking would be unreasonable. Sorry, can you repeat it? Apologies.
I was concerned about drivers being able to enter and leave the site, and can you guarantee that they'll always be able to do that forwards?
So as part of the application, a road safety audit was submitted. County Highways have had a look at that they're satisfied that there's enough space to enter the site in a forward gear, turn within the site in the totality, and come out in a forward gear. So yes, it's acceptable in that regard.
Councillor Harvey?
Is the site, if you put the previous photograph up of the site, can you tell from that whether the site fronts onto double yellow lines?
Yeah, in this photo here, you can see the double yellow lines.
It deals with the parking issue. Deals with the on-street parking issue.
Members, sorry. Have we got any further points of clarification? Councillor Keithley?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I'd like to ask a question about the design and whether it's sympathetic to the properties on the left. You can see that sort of dormer window type thing upstairs and a sort of hipped gable roof and the finishings on the roof as well. Could you tell us a bit about how the design of the new property sits against that, and also the height of the property relative to that terrace?
So these are the elevations. As you can see here, it's hipped here. It's quite similar in character with the dormers coming out of the roof. I don't have the height to hand, but I can measure it for you.
There was a comment about the colour of the roof tiles as well. We're going to suggest, are you suggesting we condition the colour of the roof tiles to match those to the neighbouring properties?
So in my report, I say that the roof tiles are currently proposed to be grey. The area is characterised by brown roof tiles, which we consider to be more appropriate. So a condition would be attached to require the submission of material details, notwithstanding what's on the plans.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Fleming?
Just looking at this, I'm concerned about the overhead view of how the layout is with the driveways. It looks like a contrived site to me. I don't particularly like the way that the thing's been done, because what it means is, can you tell me if there was obviously no objections to this, but parking two cars in the front garden at 90 degrees to the road, no other house up there has done that. And I just think that the way it's been done...
Sorry, Councillor Fleming, have you got a technical question?
Yeah, the question is this a contrived... Do you consider this to be a contrived design and layout?
I don't consider it to be a contrived design and layout. I think that, if I just jump back to this one, if you can see here, we've got sort of residential and commercial properties on this side of the road with vehicles fronting in front of that. So I think it's a bit, if that helps.
Thank you. Any further points of clarification? Nothing? Oh, Councillor Scorer, quickly.
Yeah, thank you. I get where Bill's coming from a little bit. So the house number one, if you go back to the slide, so obviously the house number one there, so the car parking space, oh no, I've got it, the green line. No, it's fine, I've cleared, I see what I was looking at the red line rather than the green line, yeah.
I think we can move on to debate then. Who would like to start? Councillor Hench-Serafin.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Chair. I was concerned about the building line. Before, it was pointed out that the building line came from number 9, which is forward of those houses next to it. So in total, really, it's well within the building line, as far as I can see. So I have no objections to that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harvey?
I'm proposing that this should be approved. I can't see a material reason why not. There's the question of the two questions seems to me to be of particular concern are access for vehicles, and that seems to be taken care of. A, because there's an existing dropped curb. That site, that junction is already used by a vehicle. So there's nothing in principle different. There's no objection from the County Highway Authority, so they're happy with it. The second sensible question seems to me about the building line, and I'll use the word I used before. I think what I saw was something that was marginal, and you could rationalise it the other way around, arguing that the 4 houses next door are further set back, and they're the odd ones out. And if you go and look at this, if you look at the whole of Warwick Road, that is the case. They are the odd ones out. So I'm not offended by that proposal. The question of the design, I think the design is modest. It's not particularly different from what's there already. And on that basis, I can't see a material planning reason not to accept the officer's recommendations. I propose grant.
Thank you very much. Councillor Keighley.
Thanks, Chair. Well, I understand why the parish council and the ward member might find this proposal less than satisfactory. It's a fairly open site, and whenever we lose an open site in a corner, people are concerned about it. But I'd agree with Councillor Harvey. In looking at the design, I'm satisfied it's in keeping and sympathetic to those properties nearby. I think the argument about the building line can work both ways. The cottages or the terrace seems to be set back to me, and the building line is not unreasonable. And I'm satisfied as a result of Councillor Harvey's questions, just teasing out the fact that the access is an existing access and drop curb at that location. I think there's no material change there. I can't see any material reason to go against the officer's recommendation. I'm happy to second Councillor Harvey's proposal.
Thank you very much. Who would like to go next in the debate? Councillor Eden.
Thank you, Chair. I disagree. The building line, in line with numbers 1 and 3, to me, is just that bit too obscure. So I'm kind of siding with the parish council and Councillor Parry's former comments. I agree about the access. That's settled, but just to my eye, it looks too juxtaposed to fit in. Although the aerial Google shot that we had earlier, where you can see the opposite corner with buildings also on an angle on the corner, did make it sort of soften that kind of objection in my head. But for me, just because it's what I think that's still contrary to CS9, but I'm not going to get anywhere with this.
Thank you for your candid comments, Councillor Eden. Anyone else like to contribute to the debate? No. Okay, we've had a proposal then to grant in line with the officer's recommendation, which has been seconded. Can I see all those in favour, please?
8.
Against?
2.
I don't believe there are any abstentions, in which case committee resolves to grant application 24/00582/FUL. Okay, we can now move on then to item 5, which is our last application in the evening. Application 24/00408/FUL, Old Mill House, Mill Lane, Kyneton. Malvina is our presenting officer, so when she's in place, we can take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. So the application site is located within the built-up area boundary of Kyneton, as indicated by the black dot on this map. The application site is a corner plot surrounded by dwellings of varied types and sizes. To the north, there is an area of open green space. Here you can see the purple line, which shows the extent of the conservation area. So for clarity, the site is not within the conservation area. The site has the existing access from Mill Crescent to the west and pedestrian access of Mill Lane. So this is the existing vehicular access here, and that's the pedestrian access there. On this slide, you can also see the existing elevations of the dwelling, which is located in the corner of that plot. Planning permission is sought to demolish the existing dwelling and erect 4 number of dwellings and associated development, including 2 new accesses of Mill Lane. First access is to the north and on the corner to the north as well, with the existing access to be retained. This slide shows the proposed site plan. And the next slide shows the proposed street scene elevations with plot number 4 on the left-hand side, plot number 3 and 2 in the middle, and plot number 1 on the corner. This photograph shows the front elevation of the existing dwelling. Excuse me, my presentation stopped working. The next photograph shows the site from the junction, and you can see an overgrown vegetation along the boundary. The dwelling is behind that vegetation there. And this photograph is taken within Mill Lane and shows the application. Excuse me. This photograph is taken from from Mill Lane and shows the site looking towards southwest. And that's the existing dwelling to be demolished. And this photograph shows the existing access from the west, the existing dwelling in the background, and the existing neighboring dwelling to the south. This photograph shows the street scene, so that's the dwelling to the south of the site, and this is the application plot in the background. Chair, the balanced recommendation is to approve the application for planning permission subject to the conditions as detailed within the committee report and the updates sheet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to our speakers then. Our first speakers are Councillor David Gosling and Ken Pridis. Like to come up? Yes, sir. Kyneton Parish Council, sorry. So you've got 3 minutes between you. How would you like to split your time?
Councillor Pridis will do all the talking, and I'm here to support and answer questions.
Jolly good. I'm happy to give you a 30-second warning ahead of your time expiring. Otherwise, yes, just the button on the right-hand side. Otherwise, when you're ready, take it away.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. We believe it's legitimate to conflate this application with the previously granted application because the transport assessment submitted here is the previous one and because there were no elevation drawings for plots 1 and 4. Our objections remain the same as last time. The street scene proposed indicates a low 0.6 metre hedge. What the artist's drawing does not show is the car park for 9 cars behind it, but not concealed by this hedge. We suggest that the proposal will be harmful to the character and local distinctiveness of the street scene and not be in accord with policies CS9, CS20, and from our neighbourhood plans, policies H4, D1 and D2. County Highways Design Guide states that a minimum space of 15 metres is required between the road junction and the exit from the site. The proposal fails to meet this spacing, which is measured at 13.4 metres. That spacing should be for vehicles leaving in a forward direction. Just think how much more dangerous it would be if you were reversing into the highway. Surely a minimum is a minimum. Highway design guides surely should be followed for road safety reasons. Returning to the neighbourhood plan, which carries material weight, there is no evidence to support the need for 4-bedroom homes in Kyneton, whereas evidence from a recent housing needs survey of need for smaller dwellings and in particular bungalows. We suggest that all of our valid reasons for objection could be overcome by developing more suitable dwellings. Lastly, the rear gardens are notably wide from side to side, but not deep from rear to the dwelling of the boundary. A single-storey rear extension and permitted development rights would disproportionately impact on the rear garden area, rendering it to be below Part L of SPD requirement of 62 square metres. For this reason, we ask you to ensure those permitted rights are removed if permission is granted. Such a condition, PD Rights Class 1 Part A, was agreed in the previous application, which for information was only granted as a result of the chair using their casting vote. Could we also please point out that the positioning of the bins for collection appears to be in the middle of the driveways, and the marked visibility displays are seemingly based on being able to look through the middle of the hedges. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well within your time. Members, do we have any questions for our parish council representatives? Nothing forthcoming, in which case thank you very much, councillors. Okay, we now move on to our next speaker, neighbour to the application site, James May. Good evening. So similarly, you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you.
I'm happy to give you a 30-second warning before your time expires. Otherwise, once you're ready, take it away.
Thank you very much. Councillors, demolishing Old Mill House to build 4 houses excessively impacts local residents, their current amenities, and would fundamentally change the local area, replacing its current rural character with tall, dominating buildings and car parking. No reasonable person is completely against the development of the site, but the proposal put forward is very poor in that it steamrolls over planning guidance, good design and the amenities and the needs of the local area, seemingly only to maximise the number of properties that become squeezed into the plot. This is to the detriment of the future habitants of the proposed properties, the village and its residents. I urge the councillors present to consider this application very carefully and to weigh whether such proposals are the direction that SDC should be taking and what the future of SDC's towns and villages would look like if such high-density proposals on gardens are allowed to continue unabated. In April last year, the previous application to the 3 houses on the same plot was passed by a deciding vote of the previous chair. Of course, the original proposal cannot be overturned, but you all have the opportunity to vote against this revised proposal and avoid the additional damage that this more recent proposal brings, and potentially leave the door open for a better proposal. On more specific points, the plan suggests that a carport will be built to cover a driveway to the rear of plot 1. Little detail is provided for this structure, but it's shown to be located less than a metre from the twin cottage, adjacent to ground floor windows, which will be for habitable spaces under twin cottages granted planning approval. This structure will likely block light to the cottage windows. The proposal creates an unacceptable intrusion of the privacy of Twin Cottage Garden, notwithstanding the fact that the size of gardens of plot 2, 3 and 4 do not comply with the supplementary planning document requirements. The committee report states that, quote, the most private and immediate areas of rear of Twin Cottage would be not affected because it would be screened by the cottage itself. But if we look at the plans, we see it's not the case, as plots 3 and 4 have direct lines of sight to the area immediately adjacent to the cottage. Mill Lane is a narrow lane, already difficult for vehicles to pass on, and anyone familiar with the area will note that vehicles regularly park on the green and pavements. The additional properties will exacerbate these traffic issues. The distance between the driveway for plot 1, 2 and the nearby junction at Mill Lane is 12 metres, less than the 15 required to satisfy the Warwickshire Design Guide for Roads and Transport. The previous application approval included a condition to not dig out foundations until an archaeological evaluation had been undertaken, which included 2 trial trenches. This appears to have been dropped in favour of a watching brief. Given that the site is largely unbuilt and the archaeological finds from previous investigations at nearby St. Peter's and Rose Cottage see no reason to change this. I respectfully urge the councillors to carefully consider the evidence, the relevant planning guidelines, the views of the many objectors, the parish council and the ward member. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Well, within your time. Members, do we have any questions for our speaker? No? No? In which case, thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
Good evening. So our next speaker is Louis Steele, agent for the application. So yes, you've got 6 minutes. Happy to give you a 30-second warning ahead of your time expiring. It's the button on the right-hand side to turn on the microphone, and once ready, take it away.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chairman and Councillors, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Louise Steele. I am from Frampton's Town Planning. As the officer has summarised, the principle of residential development on the site has already been accepted by the Council via the previous planning permission on the site. This is an extant permission that is capable of being implemented. This was a very similar application to that previously proposed, the only difference being the addition of 1 new home. The principle of demolition of the existing building has already been agreed. The site is in the built-up area boundary of Kyneton. Both the adopted local plan and the Kyneton neighbourhood plan support the principle of development in the built-up area boundary. Kyneton is identified as a main rural centre in the adopted local plan and as being suitable for some development. Kyneton provides a range of day-to-day facilities and therefore is a sustainable location for new development. As the officer states, the development is of a small scale and Kyneton can sustain 4 further homes. This is a classic small-scale infill development on a brownfield site. The proposals have a very similar footprint to that previously proposed and has the same amount of floor space across the site. We are not increasing the bulk of development. The proposals are no higher than previously approved. The houses are a relatively modest scale with the smaller 3 terraced properties in the centre of the site. The surrounding houses are mixed in scale and character, with the majority of the surrounding houses also being 2 stories in height. As set out in detail in the officer's report to committee, the proposals have been carefully designed not to cause overlooking to any neighbouring properties. The existing site is very unattractive with overgrown vegetation and the existing house is in a very poor state of repair. The planning officers have worked very proactively with my client to provide the highest quality scheme. My client, Space GK, is a local house builder specialising in high quality residential schemes of 0 to 5 dwellings. My client lives in the district and his wife is a local GP. He therefore has a vested interest in providing the highest quality schemes in the area. The site has been subject to ecological surveys and the County Council Ecology Officer is satisfied with the proposals. The proposed conditions suggested by officers require the submission of a detailed landscaping scheme and ecological mitigation. Of note, there are no objections from the local lead flood authority or the Environment Agency. There are no objections from the County Council's highway team. The highways officers is happy with the level of parking proposed at the site and considers the proposed site access acceptable. The proposals contain 3 parking spaces for each of the 4-bed dwellings and 2 for the 3-bed dwellings. This is in line with the council's standards. Bicycle stores are also proposed. There are also no objections from the Heritage Officer or the County Archaeologist, and there are no objections from the Tree Officer or the County Ecology Officer. In summary, the development is an important step to enable the delivery of new homes. This is all in line with the Council's adopted policy. The homes will contribute to the Council's house and land supply, and therefore we respectfully request that committee members endorse the Officer's positive recommendation and approve the planning application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, well within your time. Members, do we have any questions? Councillor Henry-Serafin.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Did you have a meeting with the parish council about this development at all?
I haven't personally. No, I don't know whether my client has. No, there's been no. Yeah.
You haven't really took into account the housing needs survey of the type of houses that's required in this area. Did you consider that at all?
I think across the district generally, there's obviously a need for housing of all types. And my client, knowing the local area as well, considered there's a need for 3 and 4 beds. So that's why we've come to this number. And also taking account the existing permission on the site, which is for 3 4-bed dwellings. We feel that the mix of 3 and 4 beds would be beneficial.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Simple, straightforward question, not trying to trick you or catch you out. Can you confirm that plots 1 and 4 of this application are in the same position as previously?
No, I think it's slightly shifted around the layout. It's a similar, but slightly shifted, I think. I haven't got an overlay, so, but yeah.
That would have been helpful.
Thank you.
Councillor Keithley.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks very much. If you could put that plan back up, Malvina. Oh, it is up. Yeah, so just to be clear then, you've got current permission for 3 houses.
Yes.
And this application shows 10 cars and 4 houses. How many car spaces were provided on the previous application?
Do you mind if I just look at the old plan?
Well, I'd like to know, because don't you feel that
it was 9.
9, was it?
Spaces,
9, so you've
yeah.
got 1 extra.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair, and hello and good evening. Can you just confirm, I do think you made reference to it in your presentation, confirm that the actual built form of these 4 properties in terms of floor space is exactly the same as the floor space for the application that has got
that's correct.
planning grant. So the floor space of all the built form here matches the same as the existing planning permission for 3 4-bedroom
Yeah, that's
dwellings.
correct. Yeah.
Any further questions from our speaker? No, in which case thank you very much for your contribution this evening. Okay, we'll move on now then to our final speaker, who is Ward Member Councillor Mills. Good evening, Councillor. Nice to have you with us. You have 5 minutes.
You're very kind.
Happy to give you a 30-second warning. Otherwise, when you're ready, take it away.
Thanks, Chair. Well, good evening, committee. And my thanks to the chairman for giving me a call to let me know that many members of the committee would not be attending the arranged site visit. However, I'm sure as a responsible planning committee members, they would conduct a site visit on their own accord to look at this very inappropriate application. This application before you is a very sensitive issue. Although the old mill house is not listed, it is over 300 years old and is part of the local Kyneton history. As you know, the previous application was granted only by the chairman's casting vote, and that was for 3 detached properties. We now have an application for 4 homes, which in my opinion, if granted, will result in overdevelopment of this site. I feel that cramming in another dwelling will totally be out of character for this site. I'm concerned with the overbearing nature of the proposed dwellings, and in particular the effect it will have on Twin Cottage, where the height difference of the planned dwellings is 2 metres higher, which will obviously be noticeable, and I disagree with the planning officer, sorry Malwina,
that the proposed dwellings would not undermine the prominence of Twin Cottage. And I noticed on the update sheet in the last paragraph, and I won't repeat all of it, it says this element is considered to have acceptable impacts. So therefore, there is an impact, whether it's acceptable or not, so there's an impact. Another concern is the removal of the existing hedge to be replaced by a very low hedge, again, which is totally out of character for the street scene. I mean, this is a very old site, and you've seen, but you say, I think the look of it, it is what it is in Kyneton. You know, we've got lots of very old sites, and this is looks acceptable and always looked acceptable. But replacing this with a low hedge is out of character, and again, we expose the parked cars on the proposed site, you know, and completely changing the street scene. I also must question the County Council's highways decision of no objections, as I'm not clear on whether they have considered the danger of vehicles reversing out from this site onto the road due to what appears to be insufficient space on the site to enable cars to leave in a forward way. Perhaps the committee could assure me that if this application is granted, that a condition is made that no vehicles be allowed to reverse onto the roadway. I would also like to draw your attention to the Kyneton Neighbourhood Plan, which is very robust and carries considerable material weight. I made the comment in my previous objection, or in this objection, to this proposed application that there is a need for bungalows, not large homes, and there is a clear proof that the Kyneton Neighbourhood Development Plan clearly shows the need for smaller homes, and was suggested to the committee that they scrap this application and propose more suitable and appropriate residences for this site. In summary, I feel this application is totally out of character for the area of Kyneton. There is a need for bungalows, smaller and more appropriate affordable homes for Kyneton. Cramming in another home would add to the overdevelopment of this site, and I'm unclear whether vehicles leaving the site would have to reverse onto the roadway, as this is a very busy road in the morning and in the afternoon, with school traffic using this route to avoid the congested main route through the village to avoid the school buses. Therefore, I would urge the committee to reject this inappropriate application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mills. Members, do we have any questions for our ward member, Councillor Parry?
Thank you. Good evening, Councillor Mills. I wonder whether you can advise us when the last housing needs survey was carried out by Kyneton. Was that before Kyneton's neighbourhood development plan?
I think it was since.
Done? Is it since?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes, it was, yes.
So it's what, in the last 2 years?
No, I think it's about 3, I think. 3 years.
So in the last 3 years?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions for our ward member? No, nothing forthcoming. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Committee.
Okay, that's it for our speakers for this application. We now move on then to points of clarification. Councillor Keithley.
Thanks, Chair. Right, I've got two questions, if that's okay. For the moment, the first one relates to the question that Councillor Parry asked of the applicant's agent in respect of the area of the build, because we heard from the applicant that there was no difference in the area of the build on this application to the previous, yet in your report on page 26 you're suggesting in fact there's additional floor space of 100 square metres. So I just want to clarify which is correct. Is it the same as the extent permission or not? And secondly, I'd like to understand, perhaps I'll let you answer that one first.
Thank you, Councillor. Are you referring to the community infrastructure levy for the...
That's where I picked up the reference to the additional floor space that was liable to SIL regardless of the fact that a building has been demolished. So
Yes, so that is the additional floor space above what is already built at the site, if that makes sense. So
Okay, it's not related to
comparison the previous
okay.
application.
Are you able to comment on the previous application and confirm that the floor space is the same as the previous application, the extant application?
We could potentially check the difference between the seal liable floor space from the last application and see what's the difference is.
That would be helpful, just to make sure that we got the facts right in that respect, because the argument been put forward by objectors is that there's a greater degree of build out on the site.
So currently, the floor space proposed above the demolished floor space is 201 square meters, and previously it was 240, nearly 45 square meters. So the current application actually has smaller additional footprint in comparison with the previous application.
Thank you for that. That's interesting. That'll do for now, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The points of clarification, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. May, in his submission, mentioned the height of the buildings, and there was another reference. Councillor Mills, I think, mentioned that the proposed buildings are 2 metres higher than the existing buildings in the area. Could you establish the facts for us, please?
Thank you, Councillor. So the proposed dwellings have the same heights as the previously approved, and there is a difference of approximately 2 meters between the proposed dwellings and Twin Cottage. However, other buildings in the area are taller than Twin Cottage, so basically the height difference between the proposed dwellings and surrounding build form is not as prominent. However, it is true that they're taller than Twin Cottage.
So there is a difference between making reference to the height of a particular building and buildings in the area generally. That's the message I'm drawing.
Yes.
Thank you. Any further points? Yes, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible to bring the plan up of the last application which was granted, please?
Any further points of clarification around that?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Councillor Keithley.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just clarify with the case officer, plot 4 particularly, in the later plan, what I see is a much smaller rear garden on the boundary to the cottage next door. Would that be right, or is that just my impression? Because those cars are all facing forwards, and now we've got 2 cars across and 1 car sort of facing forwards on the new plan.
Thank you, Councillor. The rear garden for the current plot 4 was measured and has acceptable area for the future occupiers, and the current plot 4 was reduced in size. When you can see that previously approved 3 dwellings have the same footprint essentially, and when we look back at at this plan, you can see that plot 4 has reduced footprint and is moved slightly forward, which means that the garden amenity will be acceptable.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
In crude terms, given that the difference between the two schemes in car parking terms is 10 versus 9, am I right in thinking that the 10th parking space effectively is in the bottom of plot 4's garden, where the existing entrance of vehicular access already is? So there's been a rearranging of at the front for 9 cars, and the additional 1 is in the back garden of plot 4. Is that correct?
That's correct, Councillor.
Councillor Scorer?
Thank you, Chairman. Just looking at the previous plans, plot 4 looks like it's gone, to the right. And is there there's a footpath, so it's right up against that footpath on that right-hand side?
Sorry, could you repeat again,
So
Councillor?
looking at plot 4 to where the previous house was, it's moved over to the right, so it's squeezed up against that footpath. So it has changed. It's gone to the right, so it's further up against that footpath on the right-hand side.
Yes, it's adjacent to the like the estate link. Essentially, that's right.
So it has moved. So it's gone closer to a footpath.
It is slightly closer. That's correct.
To me, it looks a lot closer.
So you can see on this plan by the orange dashed line where the existing dwelling is. So it would be slightly closer, but marginally, I would say. If that helps, I have a photograph of that area, so you can see.
I think that would be helpful clarification, because I think that's having a dwelling that close to that footpath, that linked footpath, would have quite a big impact on that area.
So I just have a question as well. I'll raise. Highways have come back with no objection, but subject to 9 conditions, which is a fairly reasonable amount. Our condition 18, Highways condition 8, is parking spaces and turning areas. Now, in terms of the layout in front of us, the concern was raised about accessing the site without having to reverse onto the highway. Are we satisfied that that is achievable with the arrangement as proposed in front of us, and that meets Highways condition requirements?
Yes, so based on the consultation response from Highways, they've obviously closely assessed the application. You can see they've recommended 9 conditions, so they have looked at it in detail, and they're satisfied that there's sufficient space within the site for that turning to be achievable, as well as the parking, and that condition is recommended to ensure that that's all available prior to occupation of the relevant dwelling.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. Councillor Fleming?
Yeah, on the plan for plot 4, if it's a 4-bedroom house, I'm looking, is that enough amenity land for a 4-bedroom house? Because it looks a very small back garden, and most of the amenity land seems to be taken up with the car parking area.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so I measured the garden areas, and they're in accordance with Part F of the SPD for garden amenity.
Okay, any further points of clarification? Oh yes, sorry, we're waiting for the photos.
So this photograph shows the estate link between the existing dwellings, and you can see that the dwelling on the left-hand side is also quite close to the footpath, so it's not going to be any closer.
Are you sure it's not going to be closer? Because it's going to be a 2-storey house, and it's 2 metres closer to that footpath, looking at the planning application. So I think it will have quite a impact on that area.
I think it's definitely fair to say that this proposal does bring that dwelling closer to the footpath. In officers' view, it's not significantly closer. Obviously, members may take a different view. I think it might be helpful if Malvina shows the site plan for what's proposed now and zooms in a bit so that you can see the outline of the existing house, if you want to pull that plan up. Apologies, technical difficulties. So if we move the plan slightly over this, yeah, that's it. And then move the plan this way. Other way. So you can see here the location of plot 4 in relation to the orange outline is the existing house. So the existing situation is certainly protruding more towards that link through. Like I say, officers consider that impact to be acceptable, but as a point of fact, it is going beyond that. And it is also going beyond that elevation of the house which was granted in that location previously.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the orange and the blue. It's just a little bit obviously with the red line, because actually when you follow that path round, that it's still, for my opinion, it looks still quite close.
Dangerously close to getting into debate. Are there any further points of clarification, or are we going to move on to the debate? Okay, who would like to start? Councillor Parry.
Thank you. Where I'm particularly coming from, I think if this application was before us as a totally new application with no history of permission for 3 4-bedroom dwellings, we would be looking at it, I believe, in a slightly different way, because it does look very much crammed in. However, my concern is that we have the history of granting planning permission for 3 4-bedroom dwellings where the floor size and the built form is, according to the officer, slightly smaller than the current planning permission. And so therefore the only difference really is the additional car, and yet the garden amenity space is acceptable in policy terms. So I think this is one of those, from my perspective, I totally understand where the parish council is coming from, and I totally understand the concerns raised by the residents, but on the basis that we have a planning permission that is got green for go for 3 4-bedroom dwellings, I'm struggling to find a material planning reason to refuse this, because if one refused it, it would go to appeal, and the planning inspectorate would turn around and say, well, there's already, the principle of development has already been established. So on that basis, I will be going with the officer's recommendation to grant because I can't see a material planning reason in view of the other planning permission in existence. But I am sympathetic and I do understand the concerns that have been raised by the Parish Council.
Thank you. Councillor Keithley next.
Thank you, Chair. Much along the same lines as Councillor Parry. I mean, I really get where the local opposition is coming from. In my view, this looks awfully overdeveloped. 4 properties on that fairly small space. The gardens look, you know, right on the limit of the minimal that you'd expect for the properties that have been put in there. So notwithstanding all that and the fact that there's all those cars and the impact on the neighbours, the lack of that space and this sense of overdevelopment, we've got to consider that there's already an extant permission for something that's actually, in terms of built-out square footage, slightly greater. And if I heard the case officer correctly, there's about 45 square metres less in this development. There's one more car space. Plot 4's moved forward a little bit, so in terms of the impact on the neighbours of Plot 4, I think it's less than perhaps the permission that's in place. And I also think that there'd be an argument at appeal that this is providing 2 to 3 bedroomed homes in addition to what's already there, which is 3 4-beds. So this is 4 homes instead of 3, and 2 of those homes are 3-bed. I'm also of the view that whilst I really don't much like the look of it, I think that the officer's recommendation to grant is one that we should really consider to be how we decide on this. So if Councillor Parry had made a proposal...
I don't believe I've had a formal proposal from it.
Well, I'll make a proposal that we, in respect of what I've heard from Councillor Parry and what I've put forward, that we follow the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chairman. We are in the position where there is an extant permission, and that is a large weight in the favour of this application. But that's no reason why this application shouldn't be judged on its own merits. The existing house that's on site is past its sell-by date. The only way it can be improved is through its demolition. The site, if you visit the Mill Lane, in my view, the existing site is an eyesore. It's overgrown, and I was taken by the description that one of the speakers made to the existing hedge. There is no existing hedge, there's just a wall of greenery. This site would benefit from development, and it would rid that part of Mill Lane of a development which is out of keeping. It's the existing site and its state which is out of keeping with the rest of the... If you drive around Mill Lane, Mill Crescent, and the neighbouring houses, you'll see how neat and tidy they are, with low hedges, low walls, and so on. So in my terms, this is the development of this site. I accept it's dense. I do accept that. But I think it would be an improvement to the area. And I think I have to take into account that exactly opposite the existing site is an area of green space. So I think the feeling of openness of Mill Lane will be retained largely. You can't see past the hedge of the existing plot anyway, so it doesn't add anything to the openness of the site. So I don't have any... I share the questions about SDP and minimum size for gardens and so on. I think that's genuine concern and fair comment. However, to have a site which can cope with the number of vehicles that the bedrooms require, that meets policy requirements, but I think the key thing, from my point of view, is that although this isn't 4 bungalows, it's not 3 4-bedroom houses. This is 2 4 bedrooms and two three-bedroom houses, which I think is a better mix. And knowing that the applicants have the extant permission, I would rather see a better mix of housing on this site rather than 3-4 bedrooms. So I shall be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Eden.
Thank you, Chair. I accord with my fellow councillors to a point. There's no problem with the permission to develop it. There's no problem with the old existing site needing demolishing, and the area would clearly benefit from development. The floor space is smaller, and the approved plans do put into play a good deal of still what's being proposed. However, I did get out of the grumpy side of bed this morning, and for me, the overdevelopment of the site is where is the straw that breaks the camel's back, and for me, the site does look contrived and oddly laid out, and it doesn't suit local needs, and for me, it just feels like it's just gone that one step too far, especially if you consider the previous application, which was marginal, apparently at the last planning committee, but you know, to me that looked all right. So I can't bring myself to support this, but again, I feel I'm going to get nowhere today.
Thank you, Councillor Eden. Would anyone else like to contribute to the debate at this point? Councillor Padgham.
Yeah, just wanted to agree with my colleague, Councillor Eden. I do think it looks overdeveloped. The two houses in the middle look like they've just kind of been squashed in there, and that would be sort of my concern. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. I'll just want to clarify at this point, we've had a proposal to grant in line with the officer's recommendation by Councillor Keithley. I don't believe we've had a formal second. I did see Councillor Holmes' hand go up marginally before yours, Councillor Harvey, but I have a feeling we'll get a second.
If Councillor Harvey wants to second, he can more than happy, but I am too. So whichever you'd like.
Thank you. Very good, thank you. Well, we got a second anyway. Councillor Scorer?
Yeah, I just agree with Councillor Eden. I think that actually, you know, it is, they've shoehorned 4 houses in. I disagree with Councillor Harvey, although that you might disagree with that big green hedge, but actually, you know, it's a part of Kyneton. And, you know, that if we lose habitats like that, you know, that is an important part of the village. I think it's a shame that, you know, if we rip out every green vegetation, you know, it's we're just concreting over everything.
Thank you. I think that's it for the... Oh, sorry, Councillor Keithley?
I wasn't sure if I could speak again. Chairman.
Yeah,
Chair.
Very happy to allow you to speak again, Councillor.
Well, yeah, I made the proposal, and I did so because I could see that this particular proposal is better than the proposal that's already granted, and that's the reason I made it. It provides 2 3-bedroomed houses and 2 4-bed instead of 3 4-bed, and it's a slightly reduced floor space on the existing proposal. And I would be minded, in making that proposal, I was minded to think about what would happen if it went to appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that point of view. Okay, I think everyone who's wanted to contribute has done, and we've aired it fairly. We've had a proposal to grant in line with the officer's recommendations, which has been seconded. Can I see all those in favour, please?
6.
And opposed?
Four.
Is that 4? 3.
3.
Yeah, and abstentions?
2.
Okay. In which case, committee resolves to grant application 24/00408/FUL. Thank you, everybody. I don't believe there's any urgent business, in which case I can close the meeting. Thank you very much.